Good morning, all. Today we shall be studying the histology of gastrointestinal tract. So, if we consider digestive system performs functions of ingestion, digestion, and absorption of food and water. Thus, digestive system it consists of oral cavity and associated structures such as lips, teeth, tongue, and salivary glands. It also consists of gastrointestinal tract that includes esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. And also it consists of the associated glands such as liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. Thus, in today's class, we shall be studying about gastrointestinal tract, its histology. So, gastrointestinal tract is a long mucomuscular tube which extends from the proximal part of the esophagus to the distal part of the anal canal. Gastrointestinal tract includes esophagus, stomach, duodenum, ileum, jejunum, colon, vermiform appendix, and the anal canal. The gastrointestinal tract or alimentary canal is a long muscular tube that begins at the oral cavity and ends in the anus. The esophagus and the anal canal, which are merely said to be the transport passages, the food which we take in is being transported through this esophagus as well as the anal canal, which acts as the transporting agents or the transporting passages. So the part of the alimentary canal from the stomach to the rectum is the proper digestive system where actual digestion takes place, and it is responsible for the process of digestion and absorption of food. So this is a diagram which depicts the gastrointestinal tract wherein it extends from the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, small intestine, and the large intestine. So as we said earlier, gastrointestinal tract is a combination, is a tube which consists of esophagus, stomach, small intestine as well as the large intestine. So this is the general structure of the gastrointestinal tract. If we speak about the histology of the gastrointestinal tract, the general structure of the gastrointestinal tract, it consists of four layers, that is mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa and serosa. Mucosa forms the innermost lining of the gastrointestinal tract. After this mucosa, there comes the submucosa, the second lining of the gastrointestinal tract, and then is the muscularis externa, and the outermost covering layer is said to be the serosa. So mucosa again is divided into three different linings. One is the epithelial lining epithelium, lamina propria, muscularis mucosae. These are the three subdivisions of the mucosa. Then the submucosa. And if we move on to muscularis externa, it has been divided into two different regions, that is circular inner smooth muscle layer and longitudinal outer smooth muscle layer. Okay. So thus muscularis externa is divided into two different layers, circular smooth muscle layer which is the innermost lining and the longitudinal smooth muscle which forms the external lining of the muscularis externa, and the outermost covering called as the serosa. Thus the general structure of gastrointestinal tract, that is from mouth to the large intestine, it consists of all these four layers, that is mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa and the serosa layer. And this is the overall histologic organization of the digestive tube, which here we can distinguish between how these four layers, mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa and the serosa layer is being. Now we shall learn about individual layer, how it is being formed, what are the type of cells that is being present in the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa and the serosa layer, and how actually it is being placed in individual region of the digestive tube. is said to be the mucous membrane, and it consists of three different layers: a lining epithelium, a layer of connective tissue that is called as the lamina propria that supports the epithelium, and the third layer is a thin layer of smooth muscle cells. It is called as the muscularis mucosae. Thus, mucosa membrane, it consists of lining epithelium, lamina propria, and muscularis mucosae. And then comes the second layer, the mucous membrane, which actually rests on a layer of loose areolar tissue, which is called as the submucosa. And then the gut wall derives its main strength and form because of a thick layer of muscle. We call it as the muscularis externa, which actually consists of two different layers, the inner smooth muscle and the outer smooth muscle layers. And the covering of the muscularis externa, there is a serous layer. We also call it as the adventitial layer. It acts as the covering layer or the supporting layer. Here comes the first or the innermost lining, the mucosa. The lining epithelium, it is called, in the mucosal lining, the first layer comes the lining epithelium. It is mainly made up of the columnar cells. It is throughout the gut. The columnar cells, the lining epithelium, it is mainly made up of the columnar cells, and these columnar cells are present throughout the gut. The main function of this columnar cells is absorption or it is secretion. Either so mainly the columnar cells of the lining epithelium, it is responsible for extensive absorptive surface. How the absorptive surface is being extended? By its considerable length, numerous folds, by the formation of the crypts, and by the formation of the villi. The epithelium also performs some secretory functions where secretory cells are arranged in glands. And next to the lining epithelium, there comes the connective tissue layer that is called as the lamina propria. It is mainly made up of collagen and reticular fibers which has been embedded in a glycosaminoglycan matrix. The fibroblast, blood capillaries, lymph vessels and nerves are seen mainly in this layer. And it is also been associated with the lymphoid tissue which extends into the submucosa, and the lymphoid tissue, it is called as the galt. Galt means the gut associated lymphoid tissue. The lymphoid tissue which is mainly associated with the gut, gastrointestinal tract, we call it as galt, gut associated lymphoid tissue. Then comes the third layer, the muscularis mucosae. The muscularis mucosae is a thin layer of smooth muscle which actually separates the lamina propria from the submucosa lining. Muscularis mucosae is the last lining of the mucosal membrane, and this separates the lamina propria of mucosa from submucosa. It consists of inner lining, again, in which the muscle fibers are arranged circularly, and an outer layer in which the muscle fibers are arranged longitudinally. So thus, muscularis mucosae consists of two layers of smooth muscles, that is the inner circular muscle layer and the outer longitudinal muscle layer. The muscularis mucosae extends into mucosal folds, but it doesn't form the villi. The contractions of the muscularis mucosae are important for the local mixing of intestinal contents. So thus, muscularis mucosae acts or which helps in the first mixing of the intestinal contents. The next layer is the submucosa layer. This layer of loose areolar tissue connects the mucosa to the muscularis externa layer. And this layer, it consists of numerous blood vessels, lymphatics and nerve fibers which traverse through the submucosal lining. And then comes the muscularis externa. Muscularis externa is the third layer of the gastrointestinal tract. The muscularis externa, again it consists of the smooth muscles. The muscularis externa here is divided into two layers again. The inner layer of circularly arranged muscle fibers and an outer layer of longitudinal layer. the localized thickenings of these circular muscle fibers, it forms the sphincters, uh, which can, which can occlude the lumen of the gut. So, where the pyloric sphincter, which is present around the pyloric end of the stomach, and the internal anal sphincter, which surrounds the anal canal. So, this is the pyloric sphincter. So, this is the pyloric part of the stomach. So, this is the sphincter. Okay, it forms a curving. Okay. Next, the serous and the adventitial layer. It is also called as the outermost covering lining of the gastrointestinal tract. So this is the outermost layer of the alimentary canal, and it is merely the visceral peritoneum that covers most part of the gastrointestinal tract. So the outermost part of the gastrointestinal tract is being covered by this serous or the adventitial layer. Thus, this is the general uh, framework of the basic histological organization of the gastrointestinal tract. In further classes, we shall be studying about how actually the modifications are being done in the in each layer, that is mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa, and the serous layer throughout the gut, that is from the esophagus up to the anal.